This summer, during the biggest sporting event of the year, Peacock turns to two broadcasting legends for the Olympics coverage you can't find anywhere else.
I think they mean us.
With an incredible duo sure to take home the comedy gold. Olympic Highlights with Kevin Hart and Kenan Thompson. New episodes Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Only on Peacock.
This is The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano.
They're running a strange program, y'all.
Now, here's Frank Morano.
Well, we have finally heard something from President Biden at the first campaign event of the presumptive Democratic nominee, Kamala Harris. We heard a call-in from President Biden, at least it sounded like President Biden, offering some words of encouragement for his vice president and erstwhile running mate. But there are all sorts of rumors about President Biden's health, rumors that I'm not going to repeat because I think it would be irresponsible for me to not knowing the sourcing of these rumors. But there are people suggesting that President Biden's health may not be the best. 24 hours ago, I asked my colleague, veteran broadcast journalist Dominic Carter, about some comments from the president's brother, Frank Biden, who indicated that he was stepping aside, at least in part, due to health issues. Dominic, do you remember what your response to Frank Biden was when I asked you about that yesterday?
I don't.
You did. That's because you didn't say anything. You didn't respond, and you said that your silence would tell us everything we need to know. Well, now the other members of the Biden family are apparently coming out, and they are telling Frank Biden where to go. After his comment, a source close to the Biden family tells CBS News that the president's brother is an alcoholic and his claims were completely untrue. This is what the family is saying about Frank Biden. Frank Biden suffers from alcoholism and hasn't spoken to his brother, the president, in weeks. What he said about President Biden's health being a factor in this decision is completely untrue. I'm left wondering here, is President Biden leaving office because of health issues? Is he in a dire health situation, as some people are suggesting? Or is he on the verge of a full recovery from COVID, as the White House seems to be suggesting? You've covered a lot of these stories where politicians aren't exactly being honest about things like this. And we certainly see they haven't been honest about the president's mental situation over the last couple of years. What's your take about what the president's health situation is, and what do you make of these remarks from his brother?
I strongly believe that President Biden is not running simply because he made the mistake of agreeing to an early debate, which was a fatal mistake, breaking tradition of doing it before the conventions. And whatever is ailing him, whatever's going on, whether it's age, whether it's mental, whatever it may be, whether it's physical, it's all irrelevant now because after that bad debate, everything's been exposed and it's over. But I do question, Frank, a couple of things. I do question whether or not he was really set up because there are indications. But here's what I don't get. If your campaign agrees to the debate with Trump, you as the candidate ultimately has to give the final say on that. Why would you do that? Why would you go into a live debate situation knowing that you may not be 100%, knowing you may not be 80%?
Well, I mean, I'm only speculating here, but I think he probably saw that he gave a decent State of the Union performance and thought that he could do the same thing, that he can bring his A game when he needs to bring his A game, and that having Trump up there would remind folks of all the polarizing things that they say about Trump. And honestly, they needed
what happened?
No. I mean, it was a gamble that failed miserably. So as far as this goes, I mean, look, if the president is in very poor health, that is a matter of public concern, and it's something that we need to be aware of. But your view is you don't necessarily put any stock into what any of these online investigative journalists are saying, or even what the president's brother is saying. You think the reason that he's going is because the poor debate performance and everything that followed.
Well, one, this is not the first time that you've had an estranged family member separated from the family of a president. I mean, remember with Clinton's brother?
Roger Clinton, sure.
The things sometimes he would say. So because you're related to the president, because you're the president's brother, that doesn't mean that you have the best relationship in the world.
Yeah, I think two of Obama's brothers were probably in Milwaukee with Trump celebrating his nomination.
Right. So I think that the president, what I'm more concerned about is that how long the Democrats were able to pull this off. And one of the things that bothers me, seriously, and to people listening to your program from all across the nation right now, there are progressives, some Democrats, that told us what we were witnessing with our eyes, that we were being partisans, that what was happening with our eyes was not actually happening. When we saw Biden freeze on stage and Obama gently pull him, or when Jill Biden was pulling the president, some Democrats said, no, you're being political. Your eyes are failing you. Well, guess what? Our eyes were not failing us. The White House press corps came under tremendous fire. Oh, you're doing these stories and they're biased and they're not fair. The stories were accurate, and perhaps more should have been done.
And I think that level of skepticism that is now engendered among the American public, and I don't think it's limited to the right at all, I think that level of skepticism is leading a lot of folks to question the reports that we're getting about the president's health, especially since nobody has seen him. And yesterday was the first that we've heard of him. So it'll be interesting to see where we go from here. If people want to comment, 646-720-0635. That's 1-646-720-0635. Before we let you go, Dominic, it was a pretty big day on Capitol Hill yesterday. I know you've been covering it. And the House Oversight Committee produced a rare moment of genuine bipartisanship after the Secret Service Director, Kimberly Cheatle, said she wouldn't step down despite what she called the most significant operational failure in decades. You had progressive Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna saying that the agency had no longer had the confidence of people across the political spectrum. He's certainly right. And then immediately after the hearing, you had the chair, the Republican James Comer, and the Democratic ranking member Jamie Raskin, both calling for Cheatle's resignation. Here is Nancy Mace basically saying in no uncertain terms how she felt about the Secret Service Director's performance. She, of course, a Republican from South Carolina.
You stated earlier, Secret Service is not political. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Would you say leaking your opening statement to Punchbowl News, Politico's Playbook, and Washington Post several hours before you sent it to this committee as being political? Yes or no?
I have no idea how my statement got out.
Well, that's bull.
And she actually said the word. Now, not to be outdone, New York Democratic Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was very tough on Kimberly Cheatle, and I thought asked some very good questions, including a very basic question about the perimeter that the Secret Service set up.
Why does the Secret Service perimeter, why is the Secret Service protective perimeter shorter than one of the most popular semi-automatic weapons in the United States?
And that was not a question that Kimberly Cheatle had any sort of an answer for. The problem also, Dominic, is that all of this pandemic incompetence on the part of Secret Service is just feeding more and more conspiracy theories from very reputable, very credible people. Give me your thoughts on yesterday's hearing and this whole Secret Service failure in general.
Well, I'll put it to you this way. Didn't President Biden say he was not going anywhere? That he was going to finish this race?
So Kimberly Cheatle is the new Joe Biden.
Right. It's just a matter of time. She's done. There's a bipartisan effort underway where she is going to be forced to step down. She was able to state that she wasn't going anywhere because clearly she had the support President Biden. There are reports that she had the support of the First Lady Jill Biden. We just want to hope and pray that this wasn't a DEI situation because it's ruining the country in terms of you pick a post and if you got the job under DEI, it makes one wonder if you really have the qualifications, right? The bottom line is she's got to go. President Biden said he wasn't going anywhere. He's staying in the race. I told you guys the night of the debate, he was done. It was just a matter of time until when. It's the same exact thing with the Secret Service director.
All right, 646-720-0635, 646-720-0635. Dominic Carter, thank you, my friend. We'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, Mr. 44.
Do it again. Still got the necktie on. Not a hair out of place. I love it.
But tired is, you know what?
Hey, believe me, I can relate. Just stay awake for the ride home. I'll speak loudly. Keep the volume up. I'll speak loudly.
No,
we'll keep you
I
up.
can't do that, Mr. Morano, because if I listen to you past 2 a.m., it'll be 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and then the workday starts all over again.
I hear you, brother. All right.
And I'll be laying there in bed thinking about what you're saying, literally.
There you go. That's the idea. That's the idea. And that's good advice for all of you who are driving right now. If you want to stay awake while you're driving, keep this program on. 646-720-0635. Let me begin with Frankie listening on KMOX in St. Louis. Hey there, Frankie.
Oh, hi, Frank. Man, I couldn't believe yesterday when you equated, you brought up Star Trek, Patterns of Force, Joe Biden. That John Gill of the Democratic Party. His own party, they just wasted him, just like that on Star Trek. And I'm a big Trekkie, and I thought that was a really cool comparison. And I feel horrible for President Trump, President Biden.
Right, me too.
I love President Trump. It just how could this happen? And I just love that you said that.
Yeah, I think, I don't remember if it was me or a caller that brought it up, but I followed that episode very closely. And that episode really does, if people aren't familiar with the episode, basically there's a person, John Gill, that is propped up as the leader of an authoritarian regime modeled on the Nazis. And he's really not in the best of health, and he's basically used as a symbol. You could also use Dave or Weekend at Bernie's as a metaphor for what they did in that episode, Patterns of Force. And thanks for the call, Frankie. I don't know what President Biden's mental state is, right? I can speculate that I think he's somebody that has good days and bad, and we've seen both the good days and the bad. I don't know. I think that clearly, though, he's not someone that was ever going to be in a position to run for re-election and finish another 4-year term, right? So I really do think we need some answers as to what the folks around the president knew and why they weren't forthcoming. In fact, not only were they not forthcoming, they told lies, saying he was fine, that he was outworking his younger staffers. I don't want to belabor the point, but I do think it's problematic, and I wonder if we're being told the truth about his health right now. I am seeing so many rumors about the president's health on Twitter right now. I'm not going to repeat any of them because even the ones that claim to have good sourcing, unless I know what the source is, I'm not going to repeat it, and I think it would be irresponsible. But if any of that is true, that he's not in good health right now, you have to wonder, why is the White House saying A and B is actually closer to the truth? Only time will tell. Now, I hope sincerely that he has a speedy recovery and that he is back to full health. But I have my doubts, honestly, given how they've leveled with the public on this so far. Tell me what you think. 646-720-0635. But I do have to say, kudos to the House Oversight Committee yesterday for a genuinely effective bipartisan hearing. Nancy Mace, tremendous. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, tremendous. And I have to tell you, I know a lot of people may take issue with the way Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez votes, and I certainly have my disagreements with her, and the kind of things that she does as a congresswoman with respect to constituent services, etc. But when it comes to these committee hearings, she usually is pretty good in these hearings. Not always, but she doesn't usually use it as an opportunity for ideological grandstanding. She actually uses it as an opportunity to ask real questions and hold some of these witnesses' feet to the fire. This is her talking with Kimberly Cheatle.
This is about the safety of some of the most highly targeted and valued targets internationally and domestically in the United States of America. So the idea that a report will be finalized in 60 days, let alone prior to any actionable decisions that would be made, is simply not acceptable. It has been 10 days since an assassination attempt on a former president of the United States, regardless of party. There need to be answers.
She's exactly right. And there were very few answers from Kimberly Cheatle. All right. We'll continue with your calls in a moment. 646-720-0635. That's 646-720-0635. This is The Other Side of Midnight. Straight ahead.
The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano. It's The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano.
All the old paintings on the tomb, they do the sun dance, don't you know? If you move too quick, they're falling down like a domino. On a bed, gold crocodiles, they snap their teeth on your cigarette. Falling types with the hookah pipe say, walk like an Egyptian.
Ah, yes, Walk Like an Egyptian by the Bangles. It was this day in 1952 that the military seized power in Egypt. That's right. In Egypt, the Society of Free Officers seized control of the government in a military coup d'etat staged by Colonel Nasser. And King Farouk's regime, which had been criticized for its corruption and failures in the first Arab-Israeli war, was forced to abdicate and relinquish power. Hard to believe that it was this day in 1952. Am I right? All right, 646-720-0635, 646-720-0635. Talking a little bit about yesterday's hearing by the House Oversight Committee, which I thought was refreshingly bipartisan in the outrage from members of Congress, Democrats and Republicans alike, calling the Secret Service out for their failures on this one here. And I am sticking with, and I know some people laugh at me when I say this, I am sticking with the fact that I think it was one mentally ill lone gunman. But honestly, the failures of the Secret Service here, which the more we learn seem even more egregious, it invites speculation about what else was happening. Why was this young man allowed to, whose parents had given a heads up to the authorities about his mental state? Why was he able to enter into this facility? It was the only roof in shooting distance of President Trump. Why was Trump allowed to go on instead of having a delay? I mean, it's just instance after instance of complete incompetence. If you didn't know better, you'd think it was intentional. And the more we hear about this, the fishier it sounds. Again, I'm sticking with that. I do think it was a lone gunman until we hear something else. But you have to wonder why they were behaving this way, the Secret Service and law enforcement. Is this just incompetence or is it something more? Nancy Mace drilled, she's a Republican from South Carolina, drilled Cheatle with several questions in her opening remarks to this in this hearing yesterday.
Both sides of the aisle today have asked for your resignation. Would you like to use my 5 minutes to draft your resignation letter, yes or no?
No, thank you.
Was this a colossal failure?
It was a failure.
Yes or no? Was it a colossal failure is the question. Yes or no?
I have admitted this is a terrible.
This is a yes or no series of questions. Was this a colossal failure? Yes or no?
Yes.
Was this tragedy preventable? Yes or no?
Yes.
Has the Secret Service been transparent with this committee?
Yes.
Would you say the fact that we had to issue a subpoena to get you to show up today as being transparent? Yes or no?
I have always been
yes or no. You didn't want to answer the question.
Committee.
We had to issue a subpoena to get you to show up today. That is not transparent, by the way.
Nancy Mace really did drill home that issue of lack of cooperation from Ms. Cheatle.
Is the Secret Service fully cooperating with our committee?
Yes.
Okay, you say you're fully cooperating with this committee. On July 15th, this committee sent you a list of demands of information that we wanted. Has the Secret Service provided this committee a complete list of all law enforcement personnel that were there that day? Have you done that? Have you provided a list to the Oversight Committee? Yes or no?
I will have to get back to you on that.
That is a no. Have you provided all audio and video recordings in your possession to this committee, as we asked on July 15th? Yes or no?
I would have to get back to you.
That is a no. You're full of shit today.
Now, I don't think that's how members of Congress should talk in hearings or on a public stage. I don't think that that's a good thing. I mean, if you're a 12 or 13-year-old learning about civics and, your teacher tells you watch C-SPAN to learn how Congress works, and you see what's a pretty newsworthy hearing and you see a member of Congress behaving on that way on a global stage, literally a global stage, I think that that's not an appropriate thing, right? It sets a very poor example, not just for young people, but people in general. People hear their member of Congress cursing, then they go curse at work, at school, and everywhere else. Now, I'm not a prude. I've heard a lot of profanity over the years, but there's a certain way that you should conduct yourself. I don't know that repeatedly using profanity while you're questioning a witness, I'm not sure that moves the ball forward. That being said, I thought what we heard from all the members of the committee, Democratic and Republican alike, were a very appropriate venting of the frustrations that the American people are feeling right now, not only about the initial failures, but about the tremendous failure to communicate adequately why there was such a failure to begin with, if that makes sense. It's sort of a twofold problem. You have the initial security problem, and then you have how they've handled this over the last 10 days. 646-720-0635, 646-720-0635. Al is in New York City. Hi, Al.
Hey, Frank, I wanted to say you had an interview yesterday was excellent, and I've seen you grow the last 3 or 4 years, and you turn on radio stations across America. It's always monosyllabic, and it's one or two items. You cover 8 to 10, and I got to tell you, it's excellent. And if one segment isn't good, guess what? The next one will get somebody else's interest.
Thank you. I appreciate you recognizing that. Thank you.
Yeah, I listen to a lot of people, and I'm going to tell you, you got the goods. If you got it, you got it. And you rarely are offbeat. And even if it's you get something out of the author, if they're being very kind of like in a drones fashion, you dig deeper, and I enjoy it, And I know politics is your ballywhack, but you hit everything. I wanted to ask you today, did you happen to hear the phone call that President Biden made to Vice President Harris? Because I was shocked because, it just seemed like he did a total turnaround, which is common in many people that have that kind of supposed diagnosis. Did you hear it by any chance? And could you play it? And one question also is this: If she were hypothetically put in the president's seat right now, let's say for 4 months she can showcase just, being a president, being acting presidential, and immediately go to the border and say, 2,500, 4,500? No, zero. Does she have any kind of chance to move the ball forward a little bit as far as poll numbers?
Well, good questions all. I didn't hear the entirety of the Biden call. I'm going to play a little bit for folks now. I did hear clips of it. So I don't know what to make of it. He sounded okay. I mean, the response, the coverage in certain media outlets has him sounding raspy and very weak. I'll play it for folks and let them make their own determination. I think the key to Harris's, her ability to do well in this presidential election is going to be threefold. I think it's going to be really a running against Trump kind of a situation. It's going to be talking about how, the bad things that Trump did as a person and the bad things that the bad things that his bad character attributes as a person and his poor job performance. And then I think it's going to be abortion. I think it's going to be a lot about President Trump appointing the justices that ultimately overturned about 50 years of precedent with Roe versus Wade. And I think she's going to try to milk that for as many suburban votes, particularly among women, as possible. The border issue, I think, is a loser for her because rightly or wrongly, Trump is perceived as wanting stronger border controls. And everybody remembers him calling for the wall. And he's still calling for the largest deportation of illegal immigrants in American history. I don't think the border issue is going to impact poll numbers at all. Here's a little bit of that President Biden call into the campaign headquarters so you and everybody else that didn't hear it can hear it.
Thank you.
Mr. President, thank you for calling in today. Over to you.
Julie, if I didn't have COVID, I'd be sitting there with you, standing there with you. I'm so proud but this COVID has keeping me out of people's hair for the next 3 or 4 days. But I'm going to be on the road. And I'm not going anywhere. It's kept me away a little bit, but I want people to remember that what we have done has been incredible, and we get so much more we're going to get done. And so I want to say hello to Kamala if she can hear me. I know she's going to be speaking shortly, and I want to say to the team, embrace her. She's the best. I want to call today to thank everybody in this effort.
I thought he sounded okay there, Al. I thought he sounded pretty normal.
And one last question. You're a presidential historian. I know that. Could this have happened? I know it's probably 100% wrong. Could he have shifted and pivoted and at the moment say, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to become the VP. She's taken over. We're going to ride this out for 6 months, and I'm not running again. Could he have done that in a limited capacity, staying there? But, I mean, is that possible or no? Not totally.
When you say become the VP, do you mean actually the vice president or run for vice president?
No, he refuses to run anymore. But he rides out the whole 6 month ride.
No. There's no mechanism for that. I mean, so the short answer is no. The only way I could see it happening is if he were to resign, and then she would ascend to the presidency, and then she would appoint him as the vice president, and then that would need to be approved by Congress. That's what happened with Gerald Ford and Nelson Rockefeller. But I think the as a practical matter, to get a vice presidential confirmation through Congress between now and the time of the election, I mean, is it theoretically possible? Yeah, but as a practical matter, it wouldn't be. And I don't think he would get approved, honestly.
You're right. Thanks very much.
Hey, thanks, Al. Appreciate it. 646-720-0635, 646-720-0635. Let me say hello to Pete. Hello there, Pete.
Hey, Frank. There's nobody that knows more about politics than you.
No, that is not true. I promise you that's not true. Every day I find out how little I do know, believe me.
Well, I think with Kamala going against Trump, I think that Trump will, really eat her up. I mean, definitely, because, all these things that were done wrong to this country to really drive it into the ground in the last term of Biden's term, Kamala could take responsibility too, because she was there. She spoke with him. She knew what was going on. So all these failures that was driving this country into the ground, which I hope that Donald Trump could correct, because we're in a sad state. I mean, the price of food, the price of gasoline, the price of everything. Yeah, it's killing people.
No, I understand what you're saying. And I think you'd say the same thing if President Biden were running. You understand, though, that there is maybe 40% of the country, maybe a little more than that views Trump the same way that you view Biden and Harris, right? I mean, you recognize that there are a lot of people that feel differently than you do about President Trump.
Oh, yeah, my own family. I mean, I have it all around me.
And that's why I thought that hearing yesterday was so wonderful, to have Democrats and Republicans that can't even agree, especially in the Oversight Committee, which is so partisan these days, to have these guys who can't even agree on what time it is to come together and call out the Secret Service for their failings. I thought that was a great thing, and I appreciate the call there, Pete. 646-720-0635. Frederick is in Brooklyn. Hello, Frederick.
Yes, good morning, Frank. I'm curious to know how high was that building that the shooter was on. They said he used a 5-foot ladder, according to reports I heard, to get to it. And they described the building as being in an elevated position. So exactly how high up from the ground was that building?
I don't know. I don't know, honestly, Frederick. I'll work on getting you an answer on that, either in my own research or from one of the experts that we'll have on in the coming days as we continue to analyze this. But I don't know. I don't want to give you inaccurate information. But short answer is I don't know. 646-720-0635. Silas, what do you make of all this?
Yeah, I'm glad that she had to go up to the Hill to talk. And the fact is, regardless of what you think of Trump, or yes, he if you think it's an act of God, and I don't care if people think it was conspiracy, not conspiracy, her incompetence got a great hero, a fireman, killed. If they weren't incompetent and they had stopped him and questioned him, or they told him, you're going downtown with us until this is over, that fireman, a son, a husband, a father would still be here. I got a brother who's a fireman, so this hits me because we're a brotherhood. And you mess with one of us, you mess with all of us. That's it. And those other people who got injured, none of them would have been hurt if they'd stopped this man. If they wouldn't have been so incompetent and had stopped them, at least questioned them and said, you're not going anywhere until this is over. They would have all still been here.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. You're exactly right.
Got to go.
And apparently he brought he had with him a scope or what do you call it? A rangefinder on his rifle that was apparently visible to people. It's I agree with everything you said there, Silas.
The New York police, if there was a dignitary coming to New York and I walked down the street with a backpack, they wouldn't let me get within a block of them.
No, that's for sure. I've seen that. And the NYPD is great with that kind of thing. Silas, thank you. By the way, I mean, I don't know what it means, but the South Carolina Congresswoman that I was playing you earlier, Nancy Mace, she has actually filed a motion to impeach the director of the Secret Service, Kim Cheatle, and they're going to apparently try to force a vote within the next 48 hours. Honestly, I would not be surprised if she resigned within the next 48 hours. I think this was such a disastrous hearing for her yesterday. She had no answers, and the members of Congress had a lot of good questions. And it did not come across as a partisan witch hunt at all. It was a very serious, sane, and sober proceeding where she just offered no explanation whatsoever. And I wouldn't be surprised to see her gone within 2 days, honestly. 646-720-0635. Corey is in Hazlitt. Hi, Corey.
Yeah, hi.
Corey, can I help you with something? What's on your mind?
Yeah, I was just thinking that it's not just about what happened that night and why there was no one on the building and all that kind of things. It's really about the last, I don't know how long, that they, weren't doing their job really, and they were getting paid for really doing nothing, and they weren't doing a proper job.
Yeah, Corey, thank you. I'm going to let you go because it sounds like I'm catching you in the middle of something. There has been a list of serious Secret Service scandals in recent years. We've gone through some of them. And I think you got to ask yourself the question, what is going on at that agency? I mean, and this is not, just a Democratic thing or a Republican thing. It has gone on. We had the prostitution scandal when President Obama was in Colombia, and you had all these Secret Service agents involved in a scandal involving prostitutes. You had the White House intruder incident where a guy actually managed to jump over the White House fence and enter the White House and run through the East Room before being apprehended. Then you had all sorts of agent misconduct in Ireland, where agents assigned to protect President Trump during his visit to Ireland were involved in an incident of public misconduct where there was excessive drinking and all sorts of inappropriate behavior and a lot of other things. So this is an agency whose reputation used to be pristine and is now in tatters. And I think a lot of this is their own doing. 646-720-0635. This is The Other Side of Midnight. Straight ahead.
The Other Side of Midnight. It's The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano.
By Orleans. Orleans is a terrific band, and it features John Hall. John Hall was a great part of this group. And then he got elected to Congress, actually. I guess now it's hard to believe. It was about 17, 18 years ago. And he was there, I think, 2 terms. It was a competitive district, one of the few competitive districts in the country. And you know what he did after Congress? Somebody else from the group, I think, passed away or left the group. I don't know if it was a death or they went on to something else. And he went right back to performing with Orleans. I love that. I mean, you think about that. I mean, that's like Jesse Ventura going right back to being a wrestling announcer. That's like Ronald Reagan. Obviously, the presidency is a different ballgame. It's like Ronald Reagan going right back to being an actor, right? I love that when they just go back to what they were famous for and what they did best. So today is John Hall's birthday. He is 76 years old today. Happy birthday, John Hall. Going to get to your calls in a moment. 646-720-0635. 646-720-0635. I did want to mention this. Hey, Matt Blaze, would you want to live... Serious question. And I know it's going to sound like I'm being silly, but it's a serious question. Would you want to live next door to a nuclear power plant?
Absolutely not.
Why not? I wouldn't either. Why wouldn't you?
I think it'd be very loud.
Okay.
Noisy.
Okay.
A lot of people going in and out.
Okay. That's fair.
You don't know the kind of people that'll be going in and out of a nuclear power plant.
Okay. All right.
So, and you just have that fear that something's going to happen.
Well, what's the something?
That there's going to be a leak.
A leak or something, right? Now, that's exactly kind of where I am, right? I see nuclear power is great as long as you don't live next door to the nuclear power plant. It's wonderful. It's efficient. It produces all sorts of energy without creating greenhouse gas emissions. It's been used not only in this country, but around the world for a long time. But if, God forbid, there's a terrorist attack on a nuclear power plant, or there's an accident like 3 Mile Island or Fukushima or Chernobyl, you don't want to be anywhere near that nuclear power plant, which is why I think this news out of China, which I have seen almost nowhere, is so interesting. Chinese researchers have apparently successfully tested the world's first meltdown-proof nuclear power station. I do say nuclear, and I think everybody's allowed to say nuclear now that President Bush and our nuclear former president is no longer in office. Most nuclear plants have rods of fuel, which heat water. And the rods need constant cooling, and if the system loses power, they can melt down. And that's exactly what happened in Japan in the Fukushima accident back in 2011. The plant in Shandong, China, uses pebbles rather than rods, which dissipate heat faster, meaning that even if power is lost, they will not overheat. So engineers recently shut off power to the plant as it was operating, and it naturally cooled and reached a stable temperature within 35 hours. Existing reactors, nuclear power plants that already exist, they can't be retrofitted with this design, according to the magazine New Scientist, but they are saying that this could be a blueprint for future nuclear power plants. And I think this is a great thing, potentially. I love the idea of nuclear power, but obviously I'm concerned about the prospect of an accident or a terrorist attack or something along those lines. This, who knows, I hope will provide a means for accidents to be avoided in the future. All right, 646-720-0635, 646-720-0635. Ray is in Raritan. He's been holding. Hi, Ray.
Yes, good morning, Frank. As far as those hearings go, I feel like they don't get anything accomplished. I think they're all in on it. I think the whole government should just be blown up and start all over again. I mean, they had hearings on Biden's family and all this. Nothing ever comes of anything.
Well, I know, but Ray, I understand what you're saying, because I'm just going to put you on hold just because your phone's all weird. I have lost the same faith in American institutions that you have, and not just the government, not just Congress, but the Supreme Court and the media, and honestly, a lot of religious traditions, a lot of nonprofit groups, all the military, a lot of institutions in this country, which we always held in high regard, including the Secret Service, by the way. We've now, and I don't think I'm alone here, really don't have much faith in them. And your point about these hearings, that nothing ever comes of them, honestly, that's because those hearings that you were referring to, the Biden hearings, but you could also, doesn't have to be just that. It could be the Benghazi hearings, or the January 6th hearings. They're not real hearings. They're not real attempts to do anything. They're just partisan sideshows. It's an opportunity for one party or another to score political points and to grandstand. That's why I highlighted this hearing yesterday. When's the last time I ever talked about an oversight committee hearing? Never. this hearing yesterday was so refreshing because it was so unlike anything else. Usually, the way these oversight committee hearings work, all the Republicans, they call a big, bad, evil Democrat onto the witness stand, and they say, "Oh, isn't it true that you're the worst person that ever existed?" And then the person says, "Well, no, I'm not actually the worst person that ever existed. There were 3 or 4 people." No, yes or no. Answer the question, yes or no. Don't wait for the translation. Answer me now. That's usually how this goes. And then the Democrats will come up and say, "Isn't it outrageous that you're being asked here and asked to explain why you're the worst person ever? Isn't it outrageous that this committee has turned into a partisan sham?" That's par for the course, unfortunately. And I think that's what's bred cynicism on the part of Americans. But what we saw yesterday, that didn't happen. You had Democrats and Republicans coming together, Raskin and Comer, who I don't even think agree on what body they serve in or what city they're in. Those two guys who disagree on everything. And it's not just that they disagree on the issues. They have a very different approach to politics. They both came out and said, there's no way this woman can continue as the head of the Secret Service. So I appreciate your cynicism, Ray, and I share it. But the fact that this hearing was so bipartisan yesterday, it's one of the reasons that I wanted to talk about this. Hey, by the way, I am relatively sure that I am being scammed, but this is a scam that I don't necessarily mind. I tweeted about this yesterday. If you want to take a look on my Twitter, at Frank Morano, that's Frank Morano. I got an email from apparently a podcast hosted by Kevin Spacey, and apparently Kevin Spacey, or not Kevin Spacey. See, that's a Freudian slip, right? A podcast hosted by Kevin Bacon, that they would want me to be a guest on this Kevin Bacon podcast. This is what it says. I'm writing to follow up on the email we sent previously regarding our invitation for you to join as a guest on our online podcast on Facebook. We understand that you may have missed our initial email. I did miss our initial email. There was no initial email. And we wanted to extend the invitation once again, as we would be truly honored to have you as a guest on our show. Your expertise and insights would be incredibly valuable to our audience. Now, that's how I know they're full of it. My expertise and insights is not valuable to anybody. And we believe that your participation would greatly enhance the content we share. Please let us know if you would be interested in collaborating with us. We are flexible and would be happy to accommodate your schedule. Yes, see, there you have it. Kevin Bacon is apparently very happy to respond to my schedule. So yeah, always wonder, 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Now this is at my 1 degree. I was invited on his podcast by, I'm sure this is a scam. I'm not even going to waste my time indulging in this because you could tell I've gotten all these podcast invitations, which are so obviously scams. This one is a little less obvious.
They didn't offer any money on this one?
No, not yet, which is disappointing.
You would think a Kevin Bacon podcast would have some cash to pony up to have your expertise on it.
Would you, though? I would
it's Kevin Bacon.
I know, but I think people would be so happy to go on it that...
do you get to be on a podcast with Kevin Bacon that you forget about $3,000?
If it was a real invitation, I would be happy to be on with Kevin Bacon.
And that email sounds exactly like the other 5 emails.
Exactly. But by the way, I'm hoping I tagged Kevin Bacon in the tweet. So if you find me on Twitter at Frank Morano and want to retweet that, I'm hoping he'll see it and then pronounce, oh, you know what? I actually would like to have Frank Morano on my podcast. All right, 646-720-0635. Liz is in Florida. Hi, Liz.
Hi, Frank. Why are you always getting scammed?
I don't know. I guess I have one of those faces.
Okay, so I was just wondering if the government can use spyware to find out what Kimberly's really hiding. Because clearly she's hiding something. And I know she should be removed, but we need to find out what it is. that she's not telling us.
I agree, and that was another point of bipartisan consensus, not necessarily about spying, but that there ought to be a real independent investigation here to find out exactly what went on here. I honestly, to your point about something being up here, I thought it was the strangest thing in the world for her, and thanks for the call, Liz, for her to show up at that Republican National Convention. Because she had to know, that she was going to be villain number one. And that's what happened. She was chased by senators demanding answers. So why would she go there? To me, I found that strange. I'm not saying there's something strange there, but there's something strange. Keep asking questions.